Scott Graham, the host of the True Azimuth Micro Podcast, and today I'm pleased to introduce you to Dylan James Quarles. Dylan is an award-winning novelist known for his best-selling science fiction series, The Ruins of Mars Trilogy, and his Best Indie Book Award-winning novel, There Be Monsters. Hi, Dylan. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Scott. Hi, everyone listening. Thanks for having me on. It's really awesome to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity. I hope my story inspires some of you out there to follow your bliss. It's the best thing you could possibly do.
If you've checked out other episodes of this podcast, you might know that sometimes I ask guests an additional question or two beyond asking them to share their True Azimuth story. I've got to tell you, after checking out your books, I have a question for you. And that is, if you could meet any science fiction character, like let's say they came to life and they were real, and there was this being, thing, something that you could meet in real life, what would that be?
Oh, that's easy. Aliens, 100%. But if they're not available, maybe a Nessie, like a Loch Ness monster, or I could go for a mermaid as long as they're not the murdering type. I suppose if we had to, we could do a Sasquatch, although I heard they smell bad. So I think aliens is probably my answer.
Aliens. I wonder if they ever struggle to follow their true azimuth. I guess that might be a topic for another show. Today's topic is Dylan's story. Dylan, tell us it.
A time I struggled to follow my true azimuth was when I was in my mid-20s and I was working for this large mental health nonprofit. I was in their facilities and maintenance department doing property management. And it was really labor intensive. And I was wrecking my body. Even though I was in my mid-20s, I was tearing ligaments and I was having to have these reconstructive surgeries and all this stuff was going on. And I was feeling really down because at heart, I'm a creative person. I went to college at the Evergreen State College for film production, and I loved making films as a student, and as a high schooler, I made short films and ended up in my local film festival. I was always involved in some sort of like creative process. But in the mid 2000s, around 2008, when this all took place, there was a recession going on. So I was getting work wherever I could, and that's what landed me at this mental health nonprofit doing facilities maintenance. So I was listening to books on tape at the time to kind of keep my mind occupied while I did this labor-intensive work. And I was listening to the Joseph Campbell, Bill Moyers conversations that are kind of collectively known as the Power of Myth, where they sat down for an amazing conversation at Skywalker Ranch to talk about Joseph Campbell's work and his idea of the hero's journey. And I was totally inspired by what I was hearing because I'm a big fan of mythology in general, and I think there's so much that we can learn from these stories that we continue to tell ourselves over and over again. But at one point, Joseph Campbell starts to talk about this idea of following your bliss, and that if you don't follow your bliss, you'll start to develop a schism. If you don't kind of do what you feel you were meant to do, you'll develop this schism inside yourself where you'll experience this disquietude, and you won't be able to find peace in your life. And I realized as I was listening to this that was what was happening to me. I was getting by, I was surviving the recession, I was working, but I was deeply unhappy. So I started to look around with the tools that I had at the time. How could I be creative? I knew this is what my calling was to be creative and to create things. Obviously, I couldn't go out and start shooting movies again. I was all by myself. I had no money. I was just one man. So I started to think, well, what is a movie if not a story? And I love telling stories. So I thought, well, maybe I should try doing what a lot of movies start out as, which is writing a novel. I'll try writing a novel. So I sat down and on my lunch break one day and I began to write. And I fell in love with it immediately. And one lunch break turned into two lunch breaks, into three, into my regular breaks into time even on the clock. And before I knew it, I had written a novel, and that was The Ruins of Mars. And it was the first in a trilogy of novels that I wrote. These science fiction stories about, finding ruins on Mars and exploring them. And almost as if what Joseph Campbell had said was true, by following my bliss, suddenly this whole world opened up to me. People started downloading the novel, they started reading it, they started falling in love with it. And that is when I knew that I had to follow my bliss and I had to keep writing. I had to transition away from this manual labor, facilities management stuff, and I needed to focus on that creative part of myself, and I needed to become an honest to goodness novelist. And now, many years later, I find myself in a position where I write novels, I sell novels, and I win awards for the novels I write. And Joseph Campbell was 100% right in following your bliss.
Dylan, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me on. It was an absolute pleasure. If your listeners want to connect with me, they can find me on Facebook. You can just type in Dylan James Quarles and my author page will come up. Or you can go to my website, djqfiction.com. You can connect with me there as well. I'm also on TikTok and I am on Instagram. And I respond to people when they reach out to me because I think it's important to make those connections with your readers, as I am sure you know with your listeners.